Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Dotson, and as part of my Software Engineering 2 team this semester, we've been deploying our application, which is a C# Blazor application with Docker. And this is a video whose main purpose is to explain the process that I've come up with for our team, so everyone's on the same page, but hopefully it'll also help anyone else out there who's wondering how to use Docker to assist in deploying with their applications. So let's get into it. So the problem, here's the problem that you face. You've written code in class, and often you just run it from your IDE, whether it be Visual Studio or something else. But now you need a way, how do you get that application to somewhere where it can actually be used by a customer, it can be accessed by your professors and classmates, etc. And Docker is what helps you deploy this code. When you think of deploying, you think of putting something in a place where it's going to be actually used for its intended purpose. And that's what Docker allows you to do. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the concepts of Docker at a very high level, and then I'm going to show you how to deploy with Docker, and then how to run and build an image with Docker on your production environment. So what is virtualization? Virtualization abstracts the software off of the hardware. Now, that's an entirely different video in and of itself, but basically it separates the operating system from directly interacting with the hardware. For quite a while, this has been used for operating systems. One physical server will have many different virtual servers running on it. You can run virtual machines on your computer, etc. But this is now starting to be very popular with applications. So now you can virtualize applications. What that allows you to do is it allows you to get all the dependencies and libraries that software depends on, package them into what we would call an image or a container, and then deploy it. And when you have that container, as long as you are able to run that container, that image will have all of the files, all the libraries, all the dependencies that it needs to run. And if it runs on one computer, it will run the same way on another computer, because it's not looking to the system for different files and different settings and different programs that it depends on. It's all packaged up together. So let's talk about Docker terminology real quick. A Docker image is basically a read-only copy of your application, and then once you are actually running that image, once you build it and have an instance of it, that's what a Docker container is. And users can interact with the container and make changes with it. A registry is basically like GitHub. Docker has their own one called Docker Hub, but there's options available on Amazon and other sites where you can upload your Docker images or whatever sort of containerization technology you're using, so that you have a type of source control for your images. And we'll take a look at that here in a second just to see what that looks like. So now let's talk about Docker networking. Obviously this is very simplified, but this is all we need to know for right now to get a Docker container running and accessible. So you can have a Docker container running, but if you don't have it associated to the right ports on your host machine, you won't be able to access it. So let's take a look at this illustration on the slide. You have inside your host, which is denoted by the square, you have a Docker container that's running, and that application uses port 80. Now, to actually access it, because Docker virtualizes its networking also, you have to create a binding between port 80 on your host machine and port 80 on the Docker. And we'll look at the command to do that later. But once you've done this, you'll be able to go to your local host address, 127.0.0.1, and you'll be able to access your port. Or other people, of course, assuming firewall permissions and everything are set up correctly, will be able to access that container by accessing your external IP address. And HTTP uses a standard port 80, that's the default if you don't specify a port. Port 443 is for HTTPS, so those are two important port numbers to know. A port number is basically an ID number for a process on your computer that has a network connection to another application on a different computer. And so port numbers just keep up with all the different processes because there can be thousands. Here's another example. You can see here, maybe we need to run multiple containers. You can do that. You just have to associate it with a different port number on your host. So I could associate two containers, one to port 80 and one to port 3000, and they'll be completely unique instances. They won't interact at all unless I've designed them to, and the users can connect to them by going to the IP address and then specifying the port number if it's not 80 or 443, which is the default.